My name is Renata Osei. I was 34 years old, a licensed occupational therapist with a caseload of 22 patients and a two-bedroom apartment on Fieldstone Avenue that I had paid for myself since I was 26. I had built that apartment room by room, not quickly, not all at once, but the way you build anything real, which is slowly and without announcing it. The bookshelf in the hallway I found at an estate sale and sanded back myself on a weekend in October. The kitchen drawer that stuck until I planed it down with a block of wood and 20 minutes of patience. The window latch above the sink. That apartment was mine in the specific way that things are yours when you have made them work with your own hands and your own money and no one else's schedule. I am telling you this not because I want you to think well of me, but because you need to understand exactly what the seat card said and why it landed the way it did. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private room inside Callaway's in Glenbrook Hills, the kind of place with cloth napkins folded into fans and a hostess who smiled with her whole face. My brother Marcus was marrying Delia Fontaine the following Saturday. I had driven 40 minutes in Thursday evening traffic, parked on the street, and walked in carrying a small cream envelope, a card I had written for him that afternoon, the kind of thing I always did for the people I loved, because I was not good at speeches but I was good at sitting down and finding the right words with enough quiet around me. The hostess found my name on the seating chart. Her smile held, but something in her eyes shifted, just a fraction, just enough. She walked me to table 4 and set a laminated card in front of my place setting. Cream cardstock. Black serif font. I picked it up and turned it over. It read, "Broke-ass sister living off her brother." I stood there at 7:14 p.m. on a Thursday in Glenbrook Hills and held that card in both hands. The room was not silent. That was the part that stayed with me longest. The dinner noise continued, silverware and low conversation, and the laughter from Delia's side of the long table where her father, Gerald Fontaine, was already holding his wine glass and watching me with the patient expression of a man who had planned something and was now waiting to see it land. The room was warmer than it needed to be. The chandeliers had been turned low, the kind of dim that makes everyone look like they are being flattered, and the tables were close together. The private room at Callaway's was maybe 40 feet long and had a single narrow window on the south wall with a gauze curtain drawn across it. I had been to this restaurant before. Marcus had brought me here for my birthday 2 years ago before Delia, when we split a bottle of wine and talked about nothing for 2 hours and I drove home happy. I knew where the coat room was. I knew the hallway past the kitchen. I stood at table 4 and held the laminated card and the room continued around me as if nothing had happened, because for most of the room nothing had. It landed. 3 women at his table laughed. One of them covered her mouth. Gerald did not cover anything. He held his wine glass at chest height and his expression was the expression of a man who was enjoying something he had anticipated for a long time. Across the room Marcus was turned away talking to his best man. He had not seen it yet. I set the card face down on the tablecloth. Here is what you need to know about the label. I am the daughter of 2 people who separated when Marcus was 11 and I was 19, and when they left, both of them in different directions for different reasons, Marcus stayed in the house on Carver Street and I became the person who made sure the lights stayed on. I worked 2 jobs for 14 months. I paid the back utilities. I packed his lunches and drove him to school and sat at the kitchen table while he did his homework because there was no one else to sit there. I went to college 4 years late. I built my career from scratch, without a single dollar from anyone, and by the time Marcus was 22 he had a job and a plan and a life that was entirely his own. Something settled in my chest watching him, something that had no name, just the particular stillness of a thing completed right. I was not broke. I had never been broke since the year I chose not to be. The card was not an accident of poor taste. It was a specific cruelty selected because Gerald Fontaine had decided I was the soft place to push, and because he had watched me for 2 years at family dinners and decided I would absorb it quietly. He had watched me welcome Delia into my home 3 Christmases ago when Marcus first brought her. He had watched me cover for her when she was late to their engagement party, telling Marcus she had texted me and was stuck in traffic, because she had asked me to and I did not want his night ruined. He had watched me and he had concluded something about me that was wrong. I had not told Marcus about those things. Not because I wanted credit withheld from myself, but because that is not how I kept score. What I gave, I gave. I did not itemize it for deployment later. 3 years before the rehearsal dinner, Marcus had found a house. Not a starter apartment, a house on a street with a yard, in a neighborhood where he wanted to build something permanent. The price was $724,000. His credit was good, but his history was short, and the bank wanted a co-signer with longer roots. He called me on a Sunday, and I drove to his apartment that afternoon, and we sat at his kitchen table while he laid out the paperwork. I co-signed the loan. We agreed he would carry the payments, and he did every month without missing one. What I carried was the liability, the number on my own credit report, the quiet weight of knowing that if something went wrong it would land on me too. By the time of the rehearsal dinner, the note had been structured so that the remaining co-sign obligation was approximately $6,340 in administrative transfer costs before the title cleared fully to his name alone. I had been planning to take care of that as a wedding gift. That envelope in my coat pocket, the cream one I had written at my kitchen table that afternoon, held a card with 2 sentences and a certified transfer authorization I had already signed and notarized. I sat down at table 4 and put the card in my purse and waited. I watched Gerald Fontaine smile at me across the room. Something went cold in my sternum, not anger, not hurt, something closer to the feeling of setting down a heavy bag and realizing you have been carrying it so long you forgot what your hands felt like: empty. Marcus had turned around. He was looking at me now. I watched him read the room and not yet understand what he was reading. Gerald stood for the first toast of the evening. He did not lead with the card. He was smoother than that. He talked about Delia, about her warmth, about the family she came from and the family she was joining. He talked for a full 2 minutes in the assured voice of a man accustomed to being the authority in a room, and people listen the way they listen when they have already decided a person is worth listening to. He mentioned Marcus's work ethic. He mentioned the house. He did not look at me while he said the word house. Then he paused and let the pause fill the room, and he smiled in my direction. We even made sure our new family member had a special seat, he said. We wanted her to feel at home. The laughter from his side of the table came quickly, the way laughter does when people already know the joke. I did not move. Marcus said, "What does that mean?" Gerald waved a hand. "Just a little family humor. Delia's family likes to keep things light." "What does that mean?" Marcus said again. His voice had not changed pitch. He was still holding his water glass. Gerald set down his wine. "Your sister is very comfortable here, Marcus. We just wanted to acknowledge that." I said, "The card at my place setting has a label on it." The room went quieter. Not silent, quieter. Conversations at the adjacent tables didn't stop exactly, but they thinned, the way conversations do when people are still pretending not to listen. Gerald said, "It was a joke. Some people can take a joke." "I can take a great many things," I said. "What did the card say?" Delia said quietly, "Dad." She said it the way you say a name when you have said it that way before, not surprised, just resigned to where this particular road always ended. Gerald said, "It said you're well taken care of." "Which you are. There's nothing wrong with that." "It said broke-ass sister living off her brother," I said. Those were the words. Gerald's expression did not change. That was the tell. A man who had made a mistake looks surprised when it's named. Gerald looked like a man who had rehearsed this moment. "You're sensitive," he said. "Marcus has always been generous with you. We all see that." Marcus put his water glass down on the table. The sound it made was very precise. "Generous," he said. "He's a good man," Gerald said. "He takes care of his family. Nothing wrong with a brother looking after his sister." "Gerald," I said, "my brother has never given me $1. "Renata," Marcus said. "It's fine," I told him. "It is not fine," he said. Gerald said, "I think you're making a scene over nothing. This is my daughter's rehearsal dinner and I'd appreciate." "You put a label on my seat card," I said. "At the table where I was about to sit and celebrate my brother's marriage. You chose those words and you had someone laminate them." I looked at him. "That took planning." Gerald said, "You're ungrateful. Marcus has bent over backward for you for years and you come in here and make this about yourself." The silence that followed was the first real silence of the evening. Marcus stood up. He did not raise his voice. He did not look at Gerald's side of the table. He looked at Delia, and then he looked at me, and then he picked up the laminated card from where I had set it face down and held it so the room could see it. "This is what was at my sister's seat," he said. He set it back down. "I need a minute with Renata," he said, and he walked to where I was sitting and put his hand on the back of my chair. I picked up my coat. I left the cream envelope in my purse. I drove home on the highway with the radio off. I merged onto 315 South at the on-ramp where the overpass crosses the water treatment plant, and I drove in the middle lane the whole way because I did not trust myself to make decisions about lane changes. I took the Fieldstone exit. I parked in my numbered spot and sat in the car for a moment with both hands still on the wheel. I walked up the 2 flights to my apartment. I unlocked the door. I hung my coat on the hook by the entrance. I went to the kitchen and set my bag on the counter. I took a glass from the cabinet and filled it at the tap. I sat down at my kitchen table. I did not call anyone. I did not look at my phone. I put the glass of water in front of me and sat with it until the apartment got dark, and then I got up and turned on the lamp above the table and sat back down. I had the cream envelope in my purse on the counter. I did not take it out. Some things you do not need to look at to know they are still there. 3 days passed. The wedding happened on Saturday. I did not go. Marcus called me Friday night and I let it ring, and then I sent a message that said I love you. Have a good day tomorrow. He sent back a single word, please. I did not reply. Sunday I went to the farmer's market on Henderson Road. I bought a bunch of dahlias and a jar of honey and walked back to my car in the flat morning light and sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes before starting the engine. Monday I covered 2 morning sessions at the clinic and wrote up 3 evaluation reports and ate lunch at my desk. Tuesday Marcus knocked on my door at 6:40 in the evening. I let him in. He sat at the kitchen table where I had been sitting 3 days before, and he put both hands flat on the surface and looked at them. I didn't know about the card, he said. I know, I said. Delia said she didn't either. I put the kettle on. I did not say anything. Her father is, he stopped. He thinks he was being funny. He told her it was a joke that got misread. Marcus, I said. I know, he said. I went to the drawer beside the refrigerator and I reached and passed the takeout menus and the spare keys, and I took out the cream envelope. I had put it there Thursday night after I came home, when I took everything out of my purse and put it away. I carried it to the table and set it in front of him, and I sat down across from him. He looked at it. What is this? Open it, I said. He picked it up. He worked the flap open carefully, the way he had always opened things I gave him, like he was trying not to damage the envelope. He took out the card and read it, and then he unfolded the single page behind it and held it in both hands and read it twice. He set it flat on the table between us. It was the notarized transfer authorization, the document that cleared the remaining $6,340 in cosign liability from my credit and moved the title fully into his name. I had signed it the morning of the rehearsal dinner. I had been planning to give it to him that night. This was in your pocket, he said. Yes. At the dinner. Yes. He was quiet for a long time. I want Gerald to know what this is, he said. That's your choice, I said. He picked up his phone and put it on the table and looked at me. I nodded. He called and put it on speaker. Gerald answered on the second ring with the warm, prepared voice of a man who had been expecting this call and had already decided how it would go. Marcus, he said. Good. Let's clear the air. I'm at Renata's apartment, Marcus said. She's here. A pause. All right. I want to tell you something, Marcus said. I'm listening, Gerald said. And I want to say for the record that I meant the evening as a light-hearted. 3 years ago, Marcus said, when I bought my house, Renata co-signed my loan. She put her name on a $724,000 note. Her credit, her liability, her risk for 3 years. Gerald said nothing. She was going to give me the title transfer at your dinner, Marcus said. As a wedding gift. She had it in her pocket. Marcus. She had it in her pocket when she sat down at the table that said broke-ass sister. The line was quiet. I didn't know about, Gerald started. I'm not asking you to explain, Marcus said. I'm telling you what happened. I'm telling you what she was holding when you laughed. Gerald said, I understand that changes. It doesn't change anything, I said. Both of them went quiet. It doesn't change anything, I said again. What I did because he's my brother. The card doesn't cancel the transfer and the transfer doesn't cancel the card. They're 2 separate things that both happened. I just wanted you to know what kind of person you were laughing at. Gerald said, Renata, I owe you an apology. I looked at the document on the table. You called me ungrateful in front of your family and mine, I said. That word is going to live in that room for a long time. An apology is fine. It doesn't reach back that far. The line went quiet again. Marcus said, "I'll talk to you later, Gerald," and he ended the call. He looked at me across the table. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't do it," I said. "I should have moved faster." "You moved," I said. That was enough. I slid the document back toward him. He folded it carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. I got up and finished making the tea. We sat there for another hour, the two of us, talking the way we always had, not about anything that mattered, which was the only way either of us knew how to say that the thing between us was still intact. 4 months later, I was standing on the step stool in my kitchen replacing the window latch on the frame above the sink, the same latch I had repaired myself the summer Marcus moved out of the Carver Street duplex, when I finally had a weekend with nothing to do and I had walked through my apartment finding every small broken thing and fixing it. The latch had worked loose again. I had the screwdriver out and the new hardware in a paper bag on the counter, and I was working the old screws free, one at a time in the afternoon quiet. The light came in at an angle that made the countertop look warmer than it was, and I had the window open 2 inches because the afternoon was mild, and I could hear the traffic from Fieldstone below, and somewhere down the block someone's radio playing something I did not recognize. Gerald had sent a message in September, not to me directly but through Delia, who sent it to Marcus, who forwarded it without comment. It was 3 sentences. The first said he had done some thinking. The second said he recognized the dinner had not gone the way he'd intended. The third one said he hoped we could move forward as a family. I read it once and set my phone face down on the counter and went back to what I had been doing, which was reading a book. I did not reply. Marcus and Delia were still married. Whether that was the right outcome for him was not mine to decide. He called me on Sundays and we talked for 30 or 40 minutes about nothing important, the way we always had, and I was glad for that. The latch caught. I tested it, open, shut, and it held clean. Some debts are real and some are invented, and the invented ones are always the loudest. The real ones you carry quietly and put down when the time is right, and you do not wait for someone to notice. I put the screwdriver back in the drawer. The afternoon light came through the window in a long, flat angle across the kitchen floor, and the latch on the frame above the sink held exactly where I had set it. If this story stayed with you, pass it to someone who needed to hear it today.